We always do on-time departures at Temple Emanuel. Thank you all for coming. Micah Goodman, thank you for being here. And my introduction is, here's Micah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. How's it going? Is the world going crazy? Are we losing our ability to track, to understand? When you go to a country or to a society and you want to ask what's the best way, the quickest way to ask what's the essence of that society, maybe it used to be ask what's the book that everybody here reads. If you understand the book, the thinking, the philosophy, maybe you'll get a better understanding of that society. Or you ask, what is the thinker? What is the thinker? And if you study the thinker, the thought, maybe you'll get a better understanding of that society. But I think today, the best way to understand a society is not to ask what's the number one book, not to ask what's the thinker, ask what's the debate. Every society in the world today is participating in a heated debate. If you understand the debate, you'll understand the major energies, the major forces designing, shaping that society. What's the debate? What's the argument dividing the society? We lost the ability to argue. In a regular debate, the person who thinks different than you is wrong. That's what we think about that person. They're wrong. In today's debates, person that doesn't agree with you, he or she, they're not wrong. Something's wrong with them. You make an ethical judgment regarding their personality because of their opinion in the debate. This is not an American phenomenon. This is not an Israeli phenomenon. Today, this is a universal phenomenon. And the way people understand themselves in societies is where they are in the debate and what do they really think about the people on the other side of the debate. So if you understand the argument, you'll understand the society. I came from Israel. I landed yesterday. I'm here for a few days. To understand Israel, I think we have to understand not one, but three debates. The debate happening in Iran, as we're talking. The debate happening here in the United States, as we're talking. And the debate, and how those two debates are shaping the debate we're having in Israel. We can't understand Israel without understanding the world anymore. So that's what we're going to try to do tonight. We're going to try to understand in 40 minutes, 3 debates, 3 arguments. The internal argument in the Islamic Republic of Iran, something about the argument you're having here, and how those 2 arguments are shaping the internal Israeli argument. That's what we're going to try to do tonight. Is that fair? Is that possible? No, probably not. Probably not. Probably not. We'll try to do it anyway. Probably not. So let's start with the Islamic Republic, with Iran. The 2 sides of the debate are, Iran is today a clash, an internal clash of civilizations between 2 identities, 2 understandings of the world. Now, one of the reasons why Iran is divided into these 2 different ideologies, one ideology called Iraniyat, the second ideology called Islamiyat, we'll return to this terminology later, is because what's interesting and fascinating about this ancient, impressive, powerful civilization, Iran, is that Iran's history is divided almost symmetrically into 2 pieces. Cyrus was the king in Iran, was the leader of Persia, from the 6th century before Christ. And the civilization, the Iranian civilization that was founded on a religion, what was the ancient religion of Iran? Zoroastrianism. That was their religion until the 7th century. So for roughly 1,200, 1,300 years, they were Zoroastrian. And then, in the 7th century, Arab Muslims attack Persia, conquer Persia, and after a few generations, they become Muslim. That's a radical transformation. And they were Muslim ever since for about 1,200, 1,300 years. Isn't that interesting? A civilization has a history divided into two. Part one, you're Zoroastrian. Part two, you're Muslim. Oh, and by the way, according to classical Islam, also the Islam adopted in Iran, anything that existed before Muhammad is what is called Jahiliyyah. What is Jahiliyyah? It's ignorance. It means barbaric, primitive, pagan. You can't be inspired by anything from the Jahiliyyah that was before Muhammad. You have to reject anything before Muhammad. So think about it. If I'm a Muslim person from Iran, I have a glorious past of Cyrus, and I have to reject that past because it's Jahiliyyah, because I'm Muslim. Okay, so history is divided into two. My Zoroastrian, Iranian part, and the Muslim part. Now, because history of Iran is divided into two, Iranian identity is divided into two. Some Iranians identify with the first part, with the pre-Islamic Iran. They call their children names like Cyrus, or different figures from Iranian mythology like Rostam and Jamshid and other people, like from mythological figures from pre-Islamic Iran. And some Iranians identify with the second half, Islamic Iran. But here's the thing, also the second half has two parts to it. Because when they became Muslim, they became Sunni Muslims. And then the 15th century, 16th century, they change again, this time to Shiite Muslims. So this is a very interesting civilization, filled with transformation, filled with revolutions, but widely divided into two. Now, these two identities have two different experiences of time. Because as I said before, if I'm a Muslim, so how do I see the world? The entire part of my history that was before Muhammad, it's a part that I reject, embarrassed of. And when Muhammad comes, when you become Muslim, that's progress. But if you identify with the first part, you see the first part as your glorious history, what is the Arab conquest and becoming Muslim? What does that mean to you according to the way you experience time in history? What is that? They see that as regression. That's turning our backs to the best part of our history. But it's not only how you experience time as your past, pre-Muslim past, part of your glorious or past that you are yearning to return to, or is it something you're embarrassed of and you need to reject? It's more than that. If I identify with the first half, I feel Iranian in the sense that being my main identity is national. And as a patriot, a nationalistic Iranian, I experience the fact that the Arabs conquered Iran in the 7th century. That is a historic humiliation. One of the reasons why it's a humiliation is that the Iranians, the Persians, always saw themselves as better than the Arabs. Culturally, they have the sense that their culture in the hierarchy is way, that's how they experience it, way above the Arab culture. And therefore, when they were conquered by Arabs, so it means they were defeated by people that they experience as, how do you say, nechutim? Inferior to them. So that was a massive humiliation. And since the heritage of that conquest is that we're all Muslim today, every time I remember that I'm Muslim, I'm actually reminded of the humiliation that we were conquered by people that we experience as inferior to us. Is that English? As inferior to us. So that's Okay, so that's a very national identity. But if the core of your identity is Muslim and Shiite, so for you, that's a religious identity. It's not about belonging to the nation. It's about believing in God. Nationalism is about belonging. Religion is about believing. Part of Iraniyat is about belonging. Islamiyat is about believing. Iraniyat is your role models are Cyrus. Islamiyat, it's Muhammad and Imam Hussein. So we have two different identities. One is more national, one is more religious. Does that sound familiar? Does that sound familiar where society is divided between two identities? One emphasizes a national identity and the other emphasizes a religious identity? Well, when Zionism was born, some of the founding thinkers of Zionism, the main ones like Berdichevsky and Brenner, they said what Zionism is rediscovering what Jewish identity really is, and here's what it's not according to some of the founding fathers of Zionism. It's not a religion. Religion is about believing. Zionism is about belonging. Religion is about there's a God and rituals and you worship God. That, what Zionists said, that is a distortion of the Galut. What is Judaism really? It's culture, it's language, it's land, it's solidarity, it's nation, it's a nation. And what these founding fathers of Zionism thought we need to do is take Judaism, strip it from its religious aspects, like God and rituals, and then amplify the national ones, language, culture, land, solidarity. Judaism is a nation. The reaction to that was the ultra-Orthodoxy. What did they say? The whole nation project of land, language, military, all that is when the Mashiach comes. Until then, what do? We study Torah and worship God. Judaism is a religion. This distinction, is it a religion or is it a nation, is still alive. In 1996, when Bibi, he was here for a while, quite a while we have Bibi, 1996, yeah. When he was competing against who back then? Against Peres. He brought in from here, from the States, an advisor called Arthur Finkelstein. And Arthur Finkelstein says to him, he looks at all the polls and he has this insight. He says, listen, there's two types of Israelis. Yesh Israelim veyesh Yehudim. There's Israelis and there are Jews. People that their primary identity, I'm Jewish, and there's people that their primary identity, I'm Israeli. And he said the people that are primary Israeli, they experience identity as a secular national one. People that say, I'm Jewish, they experience identity how? Religious one. And that's how Israel is divided. And he says, if we define the elections of the Jews versus the Israelis, there's more people in Israel that identify as Jews, and therefore if you win over the Jews, you'll defeat the Israelis. Dividing us that way. But how interesting is it? The distinction between Israeli and Yehudi is our identity about belonging or believing, nation or religion. It's a reflection of the internal division in Iran. Because the first thought I want to share with you tonight is that Iran is our greatest enemy. And Iran does have a fantasy to destroy Israel. It's a part of their vision, it's a part of their identity, and they're also developing the weapons to enable them to do that. They are our greatest enemy. But in the entire Middle East, there is no society, no civilization that's more similar to Israel than Iran. And their internal clash of civilizations and our internal clash of civilizations is a very similar clash of civilizations. And here's a question, it's a very big question. Now, Iran has a hard time taking these two identities and synthesizing them and connecting them and building something powerful out of them. They have a hard time doing that. You see, the Shah, Mohammad Reza Shah, the leader of Iran, before 79, he was promoting Iraniyat. He was promoting the national identity of Iranians on the expense of the religious identity. He was promoting that. And they were teaching, first of all, he's called Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi. That's the name of the dynasty, founded by his father, Reza Shah Pahlavi. What is Pahlavi? It's the name of the ancient, one of the ancient Persian languages, trying to say we're connected to the pre-Islamic past. And we are the inheritors of Cyrus. For the Islamist to claim the inheritor of Cyrus, what is that? That's an abomination for the Islamists. Anything before Muhammad is an abomination. You're saying that you're inspired by pre-Muhammad, pre-Muslim. Yes, that is the identity promoted by Muhammad Reza Shah before 79. Then there's a revolution. And now they're doing everything they can to promote a religious identity and not a national identity, a Shiite identity. Making an interesting argument. Now, if I just very briefly say something here. Why? There was a linguistic theory that goes back to the 19th century of some scholars, some British scholars, that figured out that the ancient Persian language and Sanskrit and Latin and other European languages are very similar. Mother, madar, matar, brother, bradar, bruter, hey, these are the same words. Also, the grammar structure are very similar, and they came with the conclusion that there used to be a people that spoke a language that was the mother of Latin, of Sanskrit, of ancient Persian, and other languages. And who were the people that spoke that language? They were the Aryans. Now, the Aryan theory is theory that we all know because later on the Germans would take that theory, synthesize it with a distortion interpretation of Charles Darwin, and then create the idea of hierarchy between races. But the linguistic theory was very similar. There was this group of Aryans that spoke this ancient language that later on became inspiring the languages of the West. And also, many of the values of this ancient civilization became the values of the West. And some of these Aryans, imagine where Kazakhstan is today. They moved to the south. We're talking about 2,000 years before Christ. They moved to the south. Some went to India and created the ancient great Indian civilization. And some went to Iran. Iran was named after the Aryans. The original name of Iran was Arianham. What is Arianham in ancient Persian? The land of the Aryans. The land of the Aryans. That's Iran. The people were called Persian. The land was called Arianham, the land of the Aryans. People are Persian because usually the dynasties that controlled that country came from a place called Fars, or it has different. So they had like two names. They were Persians and they were Iranians. By the way, in 1935, the king of Iran, Shah means king. Do you know that? The king of Iran saw how the Europeans in Germany were so excited about discovering their origins as Aryans. So they said, hey, let's tell them something. You're excited that you claim that your ancestors were Aryans. Guess what? We are the original Aryans. So to say that, they changed the name of Persia from Persia to Iran. That was one of the reasons. Said Nafsi, an intellectual, an advisor to Reza Shah, that was the idea. Now, this all has meaning. Because the way the Shah was leading Iran was the following. building a narrative that we're the inheritors of the greatness of the Persian Empire. And because the Persian Empire is the source of all the blessings of the West, of Western civilization, that means that, according to the Shah and his scholars, that when we're influenced by the West, we're not turning our backs on our identity. Since the origins of the West are Iranian, when we're influenced by the West, we are connecting to our identity. So it's connecting to the past of Persia and absorbing the best of Western civilization. Those were the values of the Shah of Iraniyat. How does Khomeini see the world? How did Khomeini see the world? Exactly the opposite. We have to reject the pagan past, and we definitely have to reject the contamination of Western civilization. So you have two strong identities struggling here, and they can't unite them and create a synthesis between them. So we have the Shah promoting Iraniyat, and then Khomeini Islamiyat. And now the rebels of Iran want to bring down Khamenei, but in order to go back to this nostalgia of ancient Persia and to be open to the West, they're always playing an either-or game. By the way, the Islamic Republic of Iran is, at least the attempt, is to build something hybrid. Islamic Republic. What does Islamic mean? It's like a theocracy. What is a republic? Democracy. So it's a theocratic democracy. What are they trying to do? But the thing is, it was a bold experiment in politics, but it failed. Because observers of Iran understand that it's not the Islamic Republic, it's more like the Islamic. You see, when you vote for the president, that's a democracy, right? The thing is, it's the representatives of the supreme leader, of Ali Khamenei, that tell you who you're allowed, like what's the who you can vote for. You have 4 candidates, choose one of them. So you have the religious leaders saying who are the candidates, and the people can choose between one of those. So is that like more Islamic or more republic? You chose, the majlis, the parliament, they could legislate laws. But then a committee of halachic, of religious scholars, they could decide which laws are canceled and which are not. So the parliament creates laws, that's a democracy, but theocracy could cancel whatever law that they want. So is it more democracy or theocracy? So more and more Iranians, I feel like this is not a hybrid regime, it's not an Islamic republic, it's a theocracy masked as a democracy. What I'm saying is they failed to unite these identities, Iraniyat and Islamiyat, a republic, a democracy, and a theocracy. They failed to do this. Why did they fail to do this? I want to offer a theory. You know Max Weber's theory about the connection between capitalism and Calvinism and Protestant theology? I don't want to go into this deeply, but Max Weber has a very interesting theory, is that religions have power and religions shape our lives even when we stop believing in them. For hundreds of years after society turns its back on a religion, they're still shaped and inspired and guided by that religion. Because what religion does, it creates habits of thinking. And those habits of thinking still shape your behavior even after you rejected that religion. That's Max Weber. It's fair to say that the Protestant Revolution is one of the great inventors of individualism, that as individuals we stand in front of God, and it's that individualism that is such a strong force of capitalism. It was Calvinism that says that success is a testimony that God is in your favor, and capitalism, we're always looking for success to show that that our life has worthy. All these instincts that create capitalism, Weber argues, their origins are religious. Now, if Weber is right, and I think he is, religion has power, and religion shapes us, even when we don't believe it anymore. Religion has power. What does it mean that Iran was Zoroastrian for 1,200 years? Now, what is a Zoroastrian religion? So just in a very brief, it's a following belief system that before this world was created, there were two gods. There was the good God called Ahura Mazda. And he was the good God, the God of harmony and of light. And then an evil God appears. He has a few names, Angramanyu, Ahariman. And he's not the God of light, he's the God of darkness. Not of good, but of evil. Not of harmony, but of chaos. And these two gods are about to fight. But there's a problem. In the Menog is the abstract spiritual world that existed before this world was created. In order to fight, you need time and space. The problem is that in Menog, in the spiritual world, there is no time, there is no space. So how do you have a war when there's no time or space to have a war? But there's many takes on this. I had this conversation with a scholar in Hebrew who explained this to me. How do you have a fight? So we have to create the world as a battle zone between the two gods. Ahura Mazda creates this world, which means the world was created by the good God, but Ahariman comes in and contaminates the world. So what is the universe? It's a battle zone between two gods. And what's our role as human beings? To participate in the war. Not to sit on the sidelines and to wait for who wins. You have to fight. You have to join. You can't be Haredi here. You have to join the army. You have to be a part of the battle. I hope this wasn't, I'm sorry. Yeah. So, I don't want to offend anyone. So you have to join the war. So what does it do to your mind if for 1,200 years, your entire purpose of life is to be good, part of the good God in the battle against the bad God? What does that do? How can that not shape a binary way of thinking? A mentality that's always about taking the world, dividing it into this is good, this is bad. And by that Iranian way of thinking, this is another theory, was injected into Western civilization. The idea of heaven and hell, where did that come from? From the Zoroastrian religion. The idea that in the end of days there will be a war between the good forces, the evil forces, and Messiah and redemption is the destruction of the evil forces by the good forces. Where does that come from? That comes from the Zoroastrian religion. In many ways, our habits of thinking, which are binary, are Iranian habits of thinking. Israel has the power to take Israeliness and Judaism, national identity, religious identity, and unite them. Israel has the power to be a Jewish democracy. Israel has the power to be very national and very liberal. We have the power to take opposites, to unite them, to synthesize them, and to create something great. And only if we'll be able to do that, we'll be strong enough to defeat Iran. And here is my first conclusion. In order to defeat Iran, we have to not be Iran. Overcome the traps of binary thinking habits. Overcome the seduction of the either-or game. After all, in Isaiah 45, God is described the following way. Isaiah 45 is the prophecy where Isaiah speaks about Cyrus, Koresh, and appreciates him for all the great things he did for the Jewish people. Cyrus, Koresh, is the founding father of our second temple. That's what he is. He enabled the Jews to come back to Israel. He gave them the vessels of the temple to take with them back to Israel. He gave them money to build the second temple. Our second temple, one of the founding fathers of our second commonwealth, was a Persian, was an Iranian, was Cyrus. Today's leader of Iran, Ali Khamenei, has a vision, the destruction of Israel. of our third commonwealth. So relationship with Iran is between the founding father of our second temple and Ali Khamenei that wants to destroy the third commonwealth. That's our relationship. That's our relationship with Iran. But in Isaiah 45, when he describes Cyrus, the prophet says something else. He says something how he describes our God, and this is obviously a polemic with Zoroastrianism. He says, Ani Adonai, Yotzer Or Uvoreh Choshech, Oseh Shalom Uvoreh Ra. Ani Adonai Aseh Kol Ele. Yotzer Or, which means he's a creator of light. Yotzer Or Uvoreh Choshech, the creator of light and the creator of darkness. Yotzer Or Uvoreh Choshech. Oseh Shalom, the creator of peace. Uvoreh Ra, the creator of evil. What happens to a person that's his mind is trained to worship a God that's fighting the God of evil? Or what does it do to you if you worship a God that doesn't fight the evil God, but the God is also the creator of evil? What does that do? How does that create a habit of mind that is liberated from binary either or thinking? But when we think about, okay, to defeat, in this 10-year war we have with Iran, with this massive empire, with powerful, impressive civilization. By the way, if you open the Tanakh, the Bible, there's so many groups there, so many nations there, but most of them don't exist anymore. Has anybody here ever met a Jebusite lately? Or a Girgashite? Also the Egyptians of today, it's not the same language, it's not the same. The two nations that were alive in the Bible and are alive and sovereign today there's only two, are the Persians and the Jews. And if now we're going to a 10-year war between Israel and Iran, so it's like the last standing people from the Bible are going for and here's the question. Iran is our greatest enemy, but it's also extremely, extremely similar to us. And the weakness of Iran is their binary thinking. If we get addicted to binary thinking, if it'll be like Iran, we won't have the opportunity to defeat Iran. Now I want to go to, was I speaking for too long? What's the time? Okay. So that's the Iranian debate, okay? In very, very broad strokes. I want to speak about a different debate, and I know it's a minefield. I want to speak about a myth that made Aliyah from America to Israel. And I want to be judgmental of this myth, but not judgmental of America, okay? You all have your own problems. I just want to ask, does this myth actually help Israelis understand themselves? And this is a myth that redefined nationalism. And again, I don't want to be judgmental about any American political movements. I want to ask what happens when you take an idea which is American and you locate it in Israel. And this is a myth that people like Steve Bannon are the ideologues of this myth. And it's a myth that redefines nationalism. Classically, nationalism is a phenomenon that gets strong as opposed to other nations. The German idea that we're all Germans, we're all united as Germans, was, some historians say, got strong when Napoleon invaded certain places German regions. Ukrainian identity, Ukrainian nationalism got strong when? When the Russians invaded Ukraine. I remember the 1980s, American national patriotic identity got strong when the Soviet Union was threatening America. So nationalism, what is the alchemy of nationalism? Yes, turning me into us. Ani le'anachnu. There's an us. Not me, there is an us. But to have a strong sense of belonging to us, what do you need? What do you need? Them. Now it's a problem. It's like a bug in human minds. that we need a them to feel us. But let's not be too judgmental of human nature. That's what it is most of the time. That's what it is. So if we need a them to be an us, that's classically how nationalism works. We need another nation. And the more you feel threatened by the other nation, the more you feel connected to your nation. I think that's how human nature, I think that's how it works. What is this, what we call national populism? It redefines nationalism in the following sense. It's a myth with three parts. Part number one, the elites are not nationalistic and not patriotic. They're globalist in their interests. Is interests how you say it? Interests. They're globalist in their interests, and they're cosmopolitical in their sense of belonging. That's part number one. I'm not asking if that's true or not. I'm saying, I think it might have a lot of truth in it here in America, but I'm not sure, so I don't want to go into it. But like the elites, the educated elite, their identity is not local, it's not patriotic. Their sense of belongings to other elites around the world. That's part number one. Part number two, those elites control the administrative, bureaucratic, judicial parts of the country, creating the so-called deep state. So here's the myth. The elites, which are cosmopolitical, not national, control what they call the deep state. Part number three, the deep state is stronger than the state, which means politicians elected by the people, representing the people, don't really have power because they're controlled by the bureaucrats, by the judges, by the FBI, by the academic, by people who are never elected, only appointed, and they don't represent the will of the people. What do they represent? The cosmopolitical elite. Now, if you buy this myth on its three pieces, what does that mean? Let's put all three together. It means that the nation is controlled by people that are not national. Now, that redefines nationalism. My sense of belonging, my sense of us, my sense of belonging to my nation is not an opposed to a different nation. It's as opposed to the elite of my nation, which creates the paradox of our times that in the name of nationalism, you split the nation. This is one of the biggest paradoxes of our time. In the far left, we saw the paradox that the more people the more liberal you were, the more anti-liberal you became. The shocking understanding that dafka liberal people censor words, censor books, censor lectures. That's the paradox of the left, that in the name of liberalism you become illiberal. The paradox of the right, that in the name of the nation you split the nation. And it's redefining nationalism. Your sense of belonging is not as opposed to a different nation, it's as opposed to the elite of your own nation. That's the impact of the sum of the three parts of this myth. What happens when this idea makes aliyah? When this idea makes aliyah, gets off the plane, gets, hatikva, this idea makes aliyah. So when this idea with its three parts makes aliyah, it means we don't only bring the myth with the three parts, we also bring to Israel the paradox that in the name of nationalism, you're splitting the nation. I just want to say, I want us to map out that these three pieces work in Israel. Is there a deep state seems like a conspiracy, but is there like the administrative state, the bureaucrats, the judges? Do they have too much power? That's a fair question to ask. That's a good question to ask. If many Israelis feel like they vote for a party, for the government, but then the government doesn't have power because it's controlled by people who were never elected. So you feel like as a voter, you don't have agency, you don't have power. That's a good question, and maybe there's corrections that need to be done in handing more power to the voters. That's an important conversation to have. I don't think I think there's a spark of truth to that. That doesn't mean it's all the truth. There's a spark of truth. A second question, is our deep state populated by the educated elite or in Israel? That would mean that the deep state is homogeneous and not heterogeneous. Always people from one side of the map, not from all sides. There's truth to that. Israel's administrative and judicial system has to be more heterogeneous, so every Israeli will look at the systems and see himself or herself in the systems. There is truth to that. There is, and which means countries always have to change and reshape themselves as a part of a healthy society. But in Israel, is the educated elite post-national? Is it globalist? Is it cosmopolitical? There's no spark of truth to that claim. In Israel, the educated elite just spent 170 days in Khan Yunis. And when they came home, they were recruited again to go to the Jordan Valley, and then we recruited again, and then when they came home, they were recruited again to go to Lebanon, and we have to use the same soldiers and recycle them again and again because not everybody serves. You see, is it true that in America, the educated elites don't serve in the army, are not always proud of the flag, sometimes have seduced to think like the woke progressive narratives, which have an allergic reaction to patriotism, to nationalism? Is that true? In America, I'm not saying it's true. It's an exaggeration, but it has truth to it. In Israel, there's no truth to it. Obviously, you'll always find people on the extreme left that are that way, but let's never make the mistake of painting an entire community in the colors of the most extreme version. Israel doesn't deserve to suffer from the paradox that in the name of nationalism, you're splitting your nation. And here's the thing. You know how when progressives look at Israel, the woke lens, they never understand Israel. They never understand Israel because Israel's not America. Like people say, okay, the Palestinians, they're darker. The Israelis, they're lighter. And when you're an American, always obsessed with race and power dynamics, so you think you understand the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It's like it's a race thing. It's a power dynamic between people that are light and people that are dark. It's settler colonialism, all these categories. That's a complete misunderstanding of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. When you look at Israel and you see America, you don't see Israel. But just like progressives can't understand the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, populists have a hard time understanding the Israeli conflict. Because if you look at the Israeli conflict and you think but you don't see Israel, you see America, you see, oh, it's globalists versus nationalists. Oh, that's what it is. Dude, it's patriots on both sides. You're not seeing Israel, you're seeing America. And therefore you can't understand Israel. But that's what happens when an idea makes aliyah. That's what happens when you try to take an American lens to see Israel. You don't see Israel. The left has a hard time understanding the Israeli-Palestinian conflict because it's not about race. And some people on the right have a hard time understanding in Israel. Israelis are looking at Israel through an American lens and are seeing globalists, versus patriots. In Israel, the educated elite serves in the army, is proud of the flag, feels a strong sense of belonging to Zionism. We have our problems. That's not one of them. But let's see what happens if we put these two together, right? When we're in a war with Iran, and to be in a war with Iran We have to take our narratives, unite them, unite our values, nationalism and liberalism, a Jewish democracy. Israeliyut v'yahadut. We have to synthesize, we have to build something powerful in order to deal with Iran, which its great weakness is that it can't. But what's blocking us from doing that is that we are adopting an American idea. So when we're adopting an American idea, we can't be fully Israeli and therefore will have a hard time defeating Iran. Now, I want to bring this 1 minute to this moment, this very moment. As we're talking, Iran is in trouble. Iran is in deep trouble. It actually is going through a triple crisis simultaneously. The first crisis is internal. Iran has been suffering from 7 years in a row of hyperinflation, 30% inflation. The last year, 45% inflation. Imagine that, 45% inflation after 6 years in a row of 2-digit inflation. What does that do to you? So if you're a young person in Iran, and they also have high levels of unemployment. So I don't have money because I'm unemployed. With the money that I don't have, I can't buy anything because prices are going up and up. And you add to that an energy crisis. In Iran, this past winter, they had hours and hours where there was no heating in the houses because Iran has an energy crisis. Iran has a water crisis. There's places in Iran, you open the faucet, water doesn't come out. Iran has a problem. Their air is not clean. In different places in Iran, literally you can't breathe. You won't leave your house in the middle of the day. You add all these crises together, Iranians are feeling, we had enough. This is not working for us, creating a massive internal crisis. And it happened in the wrong time for Iran, because in the past year and a half, Iran that invested so much money of Iranian taxpayers in building Hezbollah, in building Hamas, in building the Islamic Jihad, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, in building the Houthis, in building all their proxies, in Iraq, in Syria. And what happened to that massive investment? Instead of investing it in Iran, investing in the proxies, by the people in Iran notice that their money is going to the other project of building proxies around Israel in order to destroy Israel. Many people in Iran realize that their money is not going to build Iran, but to destroy Israel. They realize that one of the slogans and protests in Iran goes like this: Na Gaza, na Lubnan, Janam Fadaye Iran. Na Gaza means, don't spend my money in Gaza. Na Lubnan means, don't spend our money in Lebanon. Janam Fadaye Iran, my loyalty is only to Iran. Americans would put it this way: Iran first. Iran first, not Gaza, not Lebanon, not all these territories. Iran first. But what happens when you see we have inflation and unemployment and energy problem because we invested all our money in these proxies, and then what does the IDF do? 20 years of investment, gone. Hezbollah has 20% of its original size. Its leadership is destroyed. Syria went. The proxies in Iraq now want to be a part of Iraq. The only thing they have is the Houthis, which bombed the airport right when I was entering the airport. I'm okay. It was a nice success. Okay. By the way, I almost missed my flight because of the Houthis, which is the real problem. So think about it. They go through a regional problem. Their entire strategy of building proxies, they collapse. And now they look very weak regionally. So at the same moment where they're their weakest internally, they're humiliated regionally. And then the 20th of January, the third nightmare happened. Trump. The worst nightmare for Iran was Trump. bringing maximum pressure back, trying to isolate Iran, hoping that they could actually make Iran isolated so they can't even sell oil to China. I don't know if that's possible. That was the attempt. So these three catastrophes for Iran: Trump, the regional humiliation, and internal problems. The sum of these three crises, what happens if they all unite? Many people believe this is a moment that could bring down the Islamic Republic of Iran. But to take advantage of this moment, what do we have to do? What? We have to unite. But what does Israel decide to do right in the moment where Iran is in its biggest crisis? What do we decide to do? To go into our own crisis. To go into our own crisis. An internal crisis in Israel, which includes many, I won't go in, I don't want to go into all our problems now. I'd rather speak about other people's problems. But an American idea locates itself in Israel, increases a problem of internal division in Israel, and neutralizes our ability to take advantage of the internal crisis in Iran. Was that clear? So I want to share with you, I think, what we can do today, just for the sake of how this could look like. But right now I see an American idea blocking the ability of dividing Israel, blocking the ability of Israel to take advantage of the internal division of Iran. Till now, it was just analysis of ideas. I just want to go into for just some thoughts about policy. Okay, about what we could do now. Am I speaking for too long? Now, this is my personal understanding of the reality today. Israel is trying to recruit many soldiers to go into a war in Gaza, to renew the war in Gaza. For good reasons. We have to dismantle Hamas. In the books of history, it has to be written, it has to be said that the organization that did October 7th doesn't exist. That's how this has to end. And that's why, Israel is trying to recruit its soldiers in order to go into Gaza to finish off Hamas. I'm not sure we could win this war. I'll tell you why. One, there's no element of surprise. They know we're coming. There's no surprise element. Two, when the hostages are there, our ability to use our force is very limited. Think about one fact. I have one question. If Hassan Nasrallah had 5 hostages with him in the bunker, would he be alive today? He would have been alive today. So just think about that fact, and we understand why we managed to take Hezbollah and shrink it, and Hamas, we have a hard time doing that. 3, all the success Israel had in this war were in moments where the Israelis were united behind the war. This part of war in Gaza, Israelis are not united behind because there's a very strong narrative that this war is not the war that will bring back the hostages. This is a war that we're going to instead of bringing back the hostages. And Israel doesn't know how to win wars where the people are not united behind. But what if we reverse it? What if we make a deal with Hamas? Bring back our brothers and our sisters, by emphasizing our brothers only for one reason, because I think out of the 21, 22 that are alive, it's our brothers. Bring them back home. And then I trust Hamas. Yeah, now if you're videoing this, that will be probably the part you're taking and putting on TikTok. Will Hamas give us an excuse to go back in? I assume it will give us not one excuse. I'm sure it will give us 17 excuses. But the moment we have to go back in is after, okay, we recovered, we built the army again, and then we go to war with Hamas. We enjoy three things. The element of surprise, one, the fact our hostages are not there anymore, and the people will be united behind this war. My argument is that bringing our brothers back is not instead of victory, it's a precondition for victory. But there is a price to pay. There is a price to pay. And the price is that will seem for a while that Hamas won. See, for Hamas, all they have to do is to survive the war and they won. And it will seem for a while that we lost. Can we, which means, just like the left got it wrong in the 80s and in the 90s, when he spoke about peace now. The only peace that's possible is the peace that doesn't come now. I think the right is getting it wrong now when it speaks about victory now. There is a victory, and it's possible, but the only victory that's possible is the victory that doesn't come now. But then there is the other element of Iran. There's a tremendous opportunity with Iran. Now, you have a president that's very transactional. He wants a victory. He wants a win. He wants a deal somewhere. Ukraine, summer, give me a deal. I think it's possible that if Israel had Churchillian leadership, and what did Churchill do in World War II? Churchill understands he has only one strategy. To defeat the Nazis, he has only one strategy, and that is to bring America to the war. And he was willing to do a lot to bring America to the war. Churchill, some people don't like him today for that because we judge him using our value. We judge that time in our values. He was an imperialist. He liked the idea that Great Britain had colonies all over the world. He was a fan of the colonies. He was a colonialist, all the words. But he was willing to adopt anti-colonial rhetoric and statements that eventually led to giving up many of the colonies and shrinking the empire. He was willing to do that in order to bring Roosevelt into the war. When you play chess, sometimes you're willing to sacrifice the queen in order to win the game. He was willing to sacrifice the queen. Well, to give up the empire or to defeat the Nazis. A Churchillian move today would be to go to Trump and say, listen, Trump, you want to win? Here it is. October 7th war is over. Bring our brothers back home. But in return, let's do Tehran, Isfahan, Natanz, Qom. Let's do Iran. Now, what does it mean to do Iran? It's a big question. Is it to do the regime? Is it to do the nuclear project? I don't know what the answer to that question is. But if Israel works together with America, we could do something, with high probability, have a lot of impact in Iran. And by the way, if this theocratic regime, which is oppressing its people, collapses, and the Iranian people are liberated, then real peace will come. Because you see, we're all excited about the Abraham Accords, but you know what? The real dream is the Cyrus Accords. The peace between the Iranian people and the Israeli people, that's how peace, that will redesign, that will be reconnected to Saudi Arabia in the Abraham Accords. That is possible. This is a moment in history. Iran is fragile, but we need Trump not to be isolationist, but more interventionist, and we need Israelis to be united. You know what happens if we make a deal to end the war, to bring our hostages home? You unite the Israelis, you bring in the Americans, you change the Middle East, and we'll always remember, Zachor et asher asa lecha Amalek. Hamas's moment will come. The only victory, just like the only peace that's possible, is the peace that doesn't happen now. Also, the only victory that's possible is the victory that comes later. I hope this was helpful. Thank you very much.
Micah, I'm going to take the liberty of asking you just one question, and then we'll call it a night. Let's play word association. Qatar.
Qatar. Okay. Okay. Qatar is a piece of a bigger story, and the story is the story of Islamism. Islamism. There is Islam and there is Islamism. Islam is like it could be Jewish, like there's Judaism, there's Catholicism, there's Buddha, let's say Buddhism is a religion, and there's Islam. Islamism is like there's capitalism, there's fascism, there's communism, there's Islamism. It's not a religion, it's an ideology that says that our problems will be solved when the entire state will be governed by Islam. The slogan of the Muslim Brotherhood was Islam hu il-khal. Islam is the solution to all your problems. Islam is the solution. Now, Islamism are the greatest criticizers and destabilizers of Muslim countries. Because in places like Egypt, Tunisia, what used to be Syria, Islam was an individual religion. You worship God. The government was governed according to the laws of the country, and Islam was something to do in your mosque. Islamism is about the entire country has to be governed by Islam. That's why it was a destabilizer. Now, the theory behind Islamism, let's say the founding father of the Muslim Brotherhood, Hassan al-Banna, and later on Sayyid Qutb, and later on Yusuf al-Qaradawi, these like very important theologians of Islamism, their theory is like this: why did Islam shrink to the size of a mosque and doesn't govern the countries anymore? Why? Because of Western civilization. But think about it, it makes some sense. Western civilization is about separation of church from state, about individualism, and these ideas contaminated Muslim societies and distorted Islam, shrinking it to the size of the mosque. It's not a part of the public space. So in order to heal Muslim societies and expand Islam, we have to reject Western civilization, which has weakened Islam. And guess who's behind Western civilization, pushing Western civilization into the Middle East? This is Pshat Sayyid Qutb, this is Pshat Qaradawi, this is like the main theologians of Islamism, the Jews. The Jews are behind Western civilization. The Jews are pushing Western civilization to the Middle East to weaken Islam. And the best way the Jews are pushing Western civilization to the Middle East in order to weaken Islam is through the representative of the West in the Middle East, which is Israel, which means to purify Islam and reject the West, you have to destroy Israel. That's al-regel achat, a very shared common ideology of Islamists. This is an ideology rejected by Egypt, rejected by Tunisia, rejected even by Libya, rejected. It's a dangerous, a destabilized. In 1996, something very big happened to Islamism, which is the ideology of the Muslim Brotherhood, which gave birth to Hamas. The platform of Hamas, the original platform of Hamas, was that the Jews stand behind World War I, World War II, by the World War II. Jews are behind World War II, and the UN, and all the international bank, the Jews are behind the West, and the West is what's contaminating the Middle East. So these extremely dangerous anti-Semitic, anti-Western ideas. Egypt, they were always, Saudi Arabia was also, they were fighting these ideas. In 1996, something very good happened to these ideas. Finally, there is a country that's going to back them and support them. And that country is Qatar. Qatar has an oil gas that they share with Iran, a gigantic oil, the largest oil gas in the world. A lot of cash. The profits of this oil and gas, they share with Iran 50-50. So think about what that means. 50% of the profits go to Iran, and Iran has to feed 85 million people with their share, with their 50%. 50% goes to Qatar. How many people does Qatar have to feed? 300,000 people. So that's like, the balance. There's like 2.5 million people in Iran, but only 300,000 count because they're not foreign workers, which are kind of like slaves. They are civilians, the Qataris. So they take this wealth and they build, for example, Al Jazeera. You know what Al Jazeera is? Al Jazeera, I would say it's possible that majority of people in the Middle East, the story they live in was created by Al Jazeera, by Qatar. By the Al Jazeera exposes corruption in every Arab country, besides one. Qatar. Imagine, I don't know, CNN reporting about all the world besides the United States. Okay, so they destabilize all Arab countries and they promote the worst form of Islam. The leaders, the theologians of Islamism, like Yusuf al-Qaradawi, they built their schools of thoughts where they spread their Sharia, their law, from Qatar. So it's like the Vatican of Islamism. So through Al Jazeera, through the halacha, the law, and not only do that, they also support with money Islamist movements. So I would put it this way, Rabbi Wes. If Qatar is the safe refuges for the leadership of Hamas, if through Al Jazeera they promote the brand and the cause of Hamas, and they finance Hamas, so is it fair to say that Qatar is Hamas? Well, let's put it this way. Your country, is that fair? Can I be the Israeli in front of all the Americans? Can I be that? Okay, so you just, after 9/11, you decided to bring down Afghanistan and Iraq. The connection between Afghanistan and Al-Qaeda is much looser than the connection between Qatar and Hamas. So if Israel would have attacked Qatar the day after, would have been much more legitimate than America after 9/11 going after Afghanistan and Iraq. And yet, a few weeks after October 7th, the whole world was like, oh, Qatar is not the problem, Qatar is the solution. They're the ones that can make the connections. They're the solution. So Qatar is the Vatican of Islamism. Qatar is like the Islamist forces destabilizes every country in the Middle East, found a country that supports it, that pushes it with its cash. And so I would say, you know how there's the observation between hard power and soft power? America has nuclear bombs, that's hard power. It has aircraft carriers, that's hard power. It also has Hollywood. It has Harvard. Hard power is the ability of a society to impose its will on another society. What is soft power? What? Yeah, you spread your will. People don't obey your will, and against they want it also. Israel has two big enemies. The capital of hard power directed against Israel and the Jews is Iran. The capital of soft power directed against Israel and the Jews is Qatar. It's Qatar. And one of the reasons why we're not talking about it is because Qatar made sure he won't talk about it. Through the power of propaganda, of lobbying, of portraying yourself as a solution and not your problem, and through the art of buying individuals, the right people around the world, including my own country, that's how you get to be the one that causes the problem and gets credit for being the solution. So yes, we have a problem. We have the radical form of Shia Islam on the verge of a nuclear bomb, and we have the radical form of Sunni Islam that has something, it's not a nuclear bomb, it's Al Jazeera. Imagine the power of Fox News and CNN combined. When people live in the story designed in Qatar, so Israel is attacked by the energy of Qatar and the weapons of Iran. The ideological energy of Qatar and the weapons of Iran. Which means, by the way, it's impossible to win a war if you can't name your enemy. And I think it's a good idea, and it's not easy always to, and when your enemy wears suits and writes big checks, it's hard to see your enemy. It's hard to see it. So even if you're not buying my Qatar thing now, look into this. Look into this. Keep your eye on the ball, because we're so obsessed with Iran, and we should be, because Iran is the capital of the hard power directed against the Jewish people. But Qatar is the soft power. By the way, not only Al Jazeera, also many of the riots and the protests here in America, many of them, not all of them, many of them, the funding comes from Doha.
On that cheery note, actually, just one last thing, truly, we can't end on such a note. Give us one bit of hope.
I will. Thank you. Listen, everything I said is just words. No, really. An American idea, making Aliyah, blocking our ability to deal with Iran, Qatar, soft. Okay, fine. Every Israeli in the past year and a half that reached out to me, that read a book of mine or a podcast, and somehow was interested in what I have to say, that's a wounded soldier. Every Israeli was a wounded soldier that reached out to me. I left everything I did. I went to visit a wounded soldier. I did that not because I'm unique. That's what every Israeli would have done. Everyone in this room would have done the same. And I'm not saying that's. So I had the privilege to interact with quite a few wounded soldiers in the past. And the amazing thing about these people is that every one of them had one request. And what's that? To go back and fight. To go back to Gaza, to Lebanon, to their pluga, to their platoon, and fight. And you ask yourself, and for some reason, it wasn't surprising. Because there's something in the spirit that makes sense out of that. Because when this war broke out, Israelis panicked. Now that's not unique. People panic in every country where war breaks out. But almost always panic means leaving the country, escaping the country. There were 300,000 Israelis outside of Israel on October 7th. They all panicked. You know what they did? They came back to Israel. It's a panic in reverse. When we've seen commanders protecting their soldiers, seeing people taking bullets for each other. We've seen Israelis building NGOs overnight, building schools, building this. And we saw so much heroism throughout this war. And then the hostages start coming back home. And we look at the hostages, and what do we see? We see Agam Berger observing Pesach in Hamas. And we see Elisha, and we see Liri Elbag, when she was told by Hamas that she's coming home and Agam is staying behind. Agam will only be liberated a week later. And you never know if that's a reality. If Hamas tells you, she demanded to stay with Agam and not to leave. Hamas literally had to lie to Liri to tell her that they need her for something else and then to bring her home because she wasn't willing to leave Agam behind. Emily Damari, you know Emily Damari? She demanded to stay behind with Keith Siegel so he won't stay alone. We saw heroes throughout the war, and now we're seeing the hostages, and we're seeing a different brand of heroism. Eli Sharabi, you know who Eli Sharabi is? So Eli Sharabi, he was interviewed by Ilana Dayan, who's a very famous interviewer in Israel, And he described how one night the Hamasnik went into his cell and just for no reason, not metaphorically, broke his bones. For no reason. The Hamas heard about something in the radio, the Hamasnik, and he came and he broke his bones. So they gave him an aspirin after he broke his bones so he could get through the night. The next night, he was filled with pain, so he asked for another aspirin. Hamas said, "You're on your own." But it turns out that Alon Ohel, our brother that's still there, by the way, he's still under the ground, 50 meters under the ground. It turns out he managed to smuggle an aspirin a month beforehand from Hamas. Alon Ohel gave Elisha Rabbi his aspirin. We're witnessing human greatness in the past year and a half. We're seeing the worst of humanity. That's October 7th. But we have the privilege to be witnessing human greatness. And that's a privilege I thought I would never enjoy my entire life. I thought human greatness is a part of the past. It's not a part of the present. It's a part of how people used to be. It's not. We see this in Israel all over. So I think I share this with you in Zoom. But I'll say it again. This war has been following the pattern of the Yom Kippur War. Have I said this? Okay. You see, I don't think it's a coincidence. I think it's a coincidence. I don't think it's metaphysical, but the Yom Kippur War looks like this. A massive failure of the intelligence community that led to a surprise attack. And the first 48 hours, the Air Force didn't function. It didn't. Also, the infantry and the tanks. You see, after 48 hours, the Egyptians managed to cross the canal and put 2 tank divisions and infantry on the other side of the canal. So our soldiers got an order to attack those divisions and to push them back to Africa, back to the other side of the canal. What's called the mitkefet neged, the counterattack, on the second day of the war. And it failed. We lost, I think, 250 tanks, precious, expensive tanks. We didn't have that many left, and it failed. So after the surprise attack, the failure of the counterattack, the failure of the Air Force, Moshe Dayan holds his head, and what does he say? Churban habayit hashlishi. Israel is going to be destroyed. Panic. But surely enough, the IDF recovers and picks itself up. And in the north, we push the Syrian army out of the Golan Heights and then decide, what the hell, and move into Syria, and the war ends when we are in the gates of Damascus. Artillery distance from Damascus. In the south, it was more ambivalent. We failed to push the Egyptian brigades to the other side. But we had a very creative, brilliant general called Arik Sharon. And he said, well, if we can't push them to the other side, how about we just go to the other side ourselves? And he noticed that there was a crack between the 2 Egyptian divisions. So he was like, so they did. They went to the other side. So we say we won because there was nothing to stop our tanks from going to Cairo, and we could block their supply of food and the logistical supply. So we say we won, but they say they won. And for good reasons. They celebrate the victory in Egypt till today. And for good reason, because the war ended with their brigades on our side on Sinai. So absolute victory in the north, ambivalent victory in the south. 50 years and 1 day later. Just follow the pattern. It's the same pattern, just with one difference. On steroids. The failure of the intelligence community was much larger. The surprise was a lot greater. The dysfunctionality of the Air Force is something that Israelis we can't understand how that happened. There's conspiracy theories which are all disgusting, but the reason why there's conspiracy theories is because what happened? The failure of the army was a bigger failure. And the panic It wasn't Moshe Dayan saying, maybe this is all lost. I'm pretty sure every person in this room had a moment where you said, this might not have a good ending. And by the way, that's not just paranoia, because now we could all imagine what would have happened if on October 7th, Hezbollah would have come in full force from the north and accurate missiles landing on strategic sites in Israel. What would have happened then? I don't know, but let's put it this way. I'm sure we wouldn't be having this conversation now. It wouldn't have felt this way. We would have a different reality completely. So the failure and the panic and then the recovery, which led to mind-blowing achievements in the north. Mind-blowing. The beeper, the pager, walkie-talkie, the arsenal of Hezbollah shrinking to 18, 15% of its original size. Nasrallah, the leadership, all gone, which leads to a new government in Lebanon, like really a new Middle East. Tremendous victory. But then we look at the self, and what do we see? If Hamas say they won, you look at Gaza, that doesn't look like a victory. If we say we won, Hamas is still standing. That's not a victory. The same pattern: surprise, dysfunctionality, panic, recovery, absolute victory in the south and the north, ambivalence in the south. Just everything is on steroids. The victory was a bigger victory. The ambivalent is more ambivalent. The surprise is a bigger surprise. We just took the pattern of the Yom Kippur War, we relived it on steroids. Why is this important? First of all, it's just very interesting. It's just interesting. But I think it's important because the Yom Kippur War was a watershed moment in Israeli history. It was a moment that changed Israel forever. Before the Yom Kippur, Israel was Ben Gurion Israel, Mapai Israel, Socialist Israel, Mifleget Poalei, like and then after the Yom Kippur War, a few years later, what happens? Begin comes into power. There's a Ma'apach. We have Likud, it's a different Israel. You know how the French have this thing that every time they change a lot, what do they say? What? Now we're a new republic. We're in different France. No, that was the second French Republic. Now, de Gaulle comes around and says, okay, I changed France. Now we're not the fourth republic anymore. Now we're the fifth republic. So to borrow this French thing, lens, if we see Israel that way, so far Israel had two Israeli republics. The first Israeli republic was between 48 and 77. And that republic was designed by Ben Gurion, and it was socialist, very secular, very Ashkenazi. And then the second Israeli republic, designed by Begin and later on by Bibi, it wasn't socialist, it was capitalist. It wasn't secular, it was more traditional. It was Ashkenazi. I wouldn't say it was Mizrahi, it was more diverse. Very different Israels. But what brought an end to the first Israeli Republic was the Yom Kippur War. And what gave birth to the second Israeli Republic was the Yom Kippur War. Here's my question. If we've just relived on steroids the Yom Kippur War, are we going to relive the rebirth of Israel on the other side of the war? I believe that this war is going to bring an end to the second Israeli Republic and give birth to the third Israeli Republic. What we are going through in Israel today is a crisis. Now, in biblical Hebrew, what does crisis mean? Mashber. But the word crisis, the word mashber, it literally means, what does it literally mean in the Bible? It literally means the process of birth, of labor. That's what it means. Crisis means birth. But think about labor of birth, not in today's medicine, but in biblical medicine. That's when the metaphor was born. Now, in biblical times, when a woman is going into labor, No, it's radical uncertainty. Because 40% of the time what happens? The mother dies. So you don't know if on the other side there's death or new life. That's radical uncertainty. Because labor, I was told, is painful. I don't know. But in biblical times, you feel pain, but is this the pain of death or the pain of new life? The Jewish world is going through a biblical crisis now, a biblical mashber, and we're suffering, and it's painful, and this pain has so many dimensions, and we're in radical uncertainty. Is this pain going to lead to death or to birth? And I believe these tough times will lead to the birth of the Third Israeli Republic. And back to the point, one of the things that gives me inspiration to know that we're going to the birth of the Third Israeli Republic is the fact that while we see systems that are corrupt from the top, we see a spirit that's alive from the bottom. We're witnessing human greatness. And when it comes to Israel, I would say this is the point we're in. Will everything that is lazy, slow, sometimes corrupt on the top trickle down to the bottom? That means we're not on the right. But if things are healthy and altruistic and great in the bottom, make it up to the top, I think that's how the birth of the Third Israeli Republic looks like.
Micah, thank you.
Thank you.